Good day, everyone. My name is Kaiss, Omar AbouAbdalla. I'm a student from City University, Putrajaya, Malaysia, and I'll be presenting about my thesis topic today, improving cybersecurity in autonomous vehicles. So let's begin. We'll start out with the outline. We're going to go through the introduction, which will explain a brief about what this topic is all about. Then we'll go through the literature review, just talking a bit about what I've researched before and what I've come up with. And then we'll go through the research problems, which will include my research questions, the research objectives, the hypothesis, and methodology. And all four of these will be connected. So if I have a certain amount of research questions, they will equal the same amount of research objectives, thus equaling the hypotheses and the amount of methodologies. Then we'll go through the research justification, and finally, the conclusion and future work. So let's start out with the introduction. Now, the automotive industry is progressing towards autonomous vehicles. We all see this in the current environment. We see Tesla, we see Porsche, Mercedes. All of these are investing into developing new vehicles, which are either semi-autonomous or fully autonomous. And in the future, they're looking to be fully autonomous, of course. Now, this is a new technology. And with new technology, there's always high risk of unknown dangers. Now, the potential risk that we are looking at today is the cyber attacks aimed towards autonomous vehicles. These cyber attacks will be aimed towards the software and the hardware of the vehicle itself. Now, these hackers can cause serious damage to property and the user's lives in a worst case scenario. And all of these matters need to be dealt with, because if this is indeed a situation that could risk people's lives, it's a very, very high priority topic and subject to look into. And we need to figure out a solution towards the problem as soon as possible to minimize costs and danger. Now, in the literature review, I have researched a prior article which talks about the levels of autonomy. Now, we have level 0 to level 5. Level 0, as you can see by the diagram, has no automation. It's basically no automation, and the vehicle is controlled completely by the driver. So, for example, it's an old car, which is, let's say, a manual transmission car, a car from back in the 1960s, perhaps 1970s, which has minimal or no automation at all. Then we have driver assistant. So these vehicles assist the driver with either longitudinal cruise control, as probably we're all familiar with at this point, and lateral steering. So you can switch on this this feature in your car, and it'll help you stay in lane during long drives, like on the highway. Then we have partial automation, which is the vehicle assists drivers with both longitudinal and lateral steering for some driving conditions. So let's say in more serious conditions, let's say through the city, rather than just an open road like the highway. So that's a level 2. These are what we're focused on here. We're focused on level 3 to 5, since these are very highly controlled by the computers. So we have conditional automation, which is a vehicle in full control in some situations, and the vehicle will inform the driver if a takeover is needed. So it will give a siren or a beep, and the driver will know that it needs to be handled by the driver himself. Then we have high automation, which the vehicle takes control of a full trip. You can just set your destination from point A to point B, and the vehicle will take you there with minimal driver takeover, unless in very, very serious situations. Let's say the vehicle detects that there is a collision, or for example, it's very wet or rainy. So it'll request that the driver take control. And then we have full automation. This is the future that we're looking at, that drivers can sit back, relax, don't even have to have a steering wheel perhaps in the car, and the vehicle will drive you wherever you need. Basically a computerized taxi, let's say. Now, we have a major issue when it comes to the connectivity risk factor. If an insecure connection is discovered by a hacker or an attacker, it opens the door to potentially exploiting these issues. So further on, we have the software, which is used by the connected and autonomous vehicles, CAVs for short. It's considered legacy and open source. So as we all know, legacy and open source software is easier to exploit and easier to find backdoors to and basically hack into. Finally, the sensors are the biggest issue here as well, because if one of the sensors in a fully autonomous vehicle or a partially autonomous vehicle is hacked into and it's messed with, it could cause danger, could cause collisions, could cause major, let's say, life-threatening issues as well, and property damage. As you can see in the diagram there, we have a few different types of sensors within the car that could be taken advantage of. Now, all of these, if taken advantage of separately, might not have a big issue, but if the whole thing is taken advantage of, we are looking at a full takeover of the vehicle, and you could be locked in it yourself. So we'll go through the research problem. First thing are my research questions. We want to know what the effects, what effects have cyber attacks had on autonomous vehicles? Why did the attacks occur, and what part of the vehicles were targeted? Have manufacturers taken any action to combat these cyber attacks, if reported? Have autonomous vehicle sales dropped ever since people have become aware of these potential risks? We also have which area of the autonomous vehicle is most vulnerable to cyber attacks? Is it the software? Is it the hardware? And how often do cyber attacks occur on autonomous vehicles? So all of this will be conducted, and we will find out, according to these questions, what we can discover and what we can do. So now the objectives. We want to analyze how these cyber attacks have affected autonomous vehicles. We want to understand why attackers target autonomous vehicles and which areas are targeted in such attacks. We want to find out what actions have been or are being taken by the manufacturers to combat such attacks. We'll analyze sales figures to find out if after an attack has occurred and it's been reported in news or media, has it affected these sale figures for certain vehicle companies and brands. And they want to discover what areas of autonomous vehicles are most vulnerable in the cyber attacks, be it with the vehicle software itself or network or the hardware. So we'll figure that out as well. And we want to figure out the frequency that autonomous vehicles are attacked by hackers. Now we have the hypothesis. Theoretically speaking, autonomous vehicles can be tampered with remotely with large amounts. Sorry, we'll move that here. Okay. These vehicles are potentially, large amounts of damage to both the vehicle and potentially to public property in the case of collision. So if these vehicles are tampered with, like I said, property damage could be a factor. And we also have customer damage. Damages to the car itself, their property, public property, and so on. Attackers potentially target autonomous vehicles similarly to why they target users' computers to exploit the owner into paying a ransom. Hypothetically speaking, the vehicle manufacturers are conducting large amounts of research to develop methods to counter these loopholes and flaws in the system. And we also want to have an educated assumption that would help deduce that with such high risk to users' life in the event of an attack carried out on their autonomous vehicle, customers would steer away from purchasing autonomous vehicles, since firstly, they're more expensive at the current standard compared to non-autonomous vehicles. And if there's a high risk and not much reward, then customers would prefer to purchase a normal vehicle rather than autonomous vehicles. And due to the nature of software utilized by autonomous vehicles being open source, the largest target for the attacker's vehicle is the software for the attackers is the vehicle software itself, while the network and the vehicle used to communicate may be more challenging to attack, since the network is a larger infrastructure compared to the software of the individual vehicles themselves. And since autonomous vehicles are not currently common, attacks may not be abundant, but they might still be there. And we'll have to compare if the amount of autonomous vehicles in a certain area equals a certain amount of attacks, and what the frequency is according to those figures. So it's not just a general term. If we have more cars, are there more attacks? Have less cars, are there less attacks? Are the attacks correlated with the figures themselves? And finally, we have the research methodology, which is studying previously documented reports. We'll find out if the effects of the attacks on autonomous vehicles in the past few years. We'll analyze the data on a number of cyber attacks which have occurred and have been documented to find out what part of the vehicle is most vulnerable and most attacked. We'll research reports and manufacturer responses on these attacks and what they're doing to combat them. We'll also analyze sales figures to figure out if sales have dropped after a certain period of time after an attack, or if they're still the same, or if they've increased, which is highly unlikely. We'll also analyze post-attack reports to find out which are the most vulnerable areas that are most frequently exploited. And finally, we'll also research when attacks have occurred and the frequency of such attacks based on the publication of reports and provided dates. Now, we have the research justification. Why am I doing this research? As with other technology, exploitation for malicious means is inevitable. There's always going to be someone looking to exploit the user, try to gain their own benefit. In most terms, it is money, but in other terms, perhaps it's other reasons. In autonomous vehicles, cyber attacks can lead to major consequences, like I've mentioned. Could be loss of life, could be loss of life of the driver themselves or pedestrians, could be property damage, could be damage to the vehicle itself, and so on and so forth. Manufacturers may overlook such vulnerabilities, leading to serious damages and costs to both the manufacturer and a tarnished reputation to the manufacturer, and to costs towards the customer, because they might have to repair their vehicle, they might have to pay for property damages, and so on. The list can go on. So there's a major cost concern there. And it is crucial to find ways to combat such risks, as we have done with current technology. So as we've done with computers, mobile phones, smartphones, as we've been able to fully, or at least abundantly, secure these pieces of technology, we will be able to, as time goes on, secure this new technology that has come up into the market. And the sooner we do it, the better. Finally, the conclusion and future work. Now, autonomous vehicles are inevitably becoming more mainstream as we move towards the future of transportation. By understanding the vulnerabilities, we can develop methods of developing a stronger security infrastructure and stronger security, more secure software, and so on and so forth. Customers will also feel safer when choosing to purchase CAVs, which are autonomous vehicles, connected and autonomous vehicles. It is vital that further research is conducted extensively and testing is done with whatever solution we come up with, to make sure that these solutions actually work in real life scenarios and situations. And we also need to find out if this solution is able to survive a long period of time. It's not going to be something that's just temporary. We want a solution that's long lasting. We don't want to keep on having to combat the same issue over and over again. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and I hope that has given you a greater understanding of why I've chosen this topic and why I'll be researching this particular area and field. Thank you very much and have a nice day.